Welcome into the D2 Baseball Podcast. Robert Fry here today, joined with Missouri Western State's newest head coach and fourth head coach in program history, Michael Keeran. Coach, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Robert. Really appreciate being on. Excited to talk ball and all things Mo West baseball.
Yeah, let's kind of start there. You've kind of give a little bit about your background, and obviously you had a pretty good coaching career at the junior college level. What drew you to this position at Missouri Western?
Yeah, started out coaching high school baseball and got to be around some a really good program that won a ton. We got to win a couple state titles that I was a part of on staff, and was in the college summer ranks. Kind of went unconventional and went that route. And had a lot of success there and got some good connections and networking, and got to coach some guys that are now in the professional ranks, and got to have a good eye for talent. And then got into after small stint as a 4-year recruiting coordinator, got to get into junior college baseball and had a ton of success there. And it was up north, and so it's different geographically. It was a different it was a different type of recruitment, different type of sales pitch. And then spent a year out of Division I as a recruiting coordinator and assistant head coach, and then went back to JUCO as a head coach for a couple of years and had some success. And yeah, what drew me here, I think, was number one, the league is extremely talented. I think it's as talented as any Division I mid-major league, honestly. And it's a very veteran, league. Experienced league. There's a ton of really, really good head coaches in this league and good programs. And so I think you want to compete against the best. And I think the longer I stayed in JUCO, I was in love with it. I might've been there forever, but you got to kind of get out of your comfort zone to try to accomplish some of the goals you have in life and to experience some new things for family and for yourself. I always wanted to be at the 4-year ranks. It's just, everybody takes a different route to get there. So when I had the opportunity to become a head coach at the 4-year level in such a great league and with a place with really, really good facilities and a really good vision, it was a no-brainer for me and my family.
And you kind of talked about, recruiting and things like that. You've had plenty of experience recruiting at different levels, NAIA, junior college, Division I. How did that help you once you got on the job, try to recruit a roster, with a lot of turnover?
Yeah, I think it was just using your past experiences and maybe your past successes to, it was tough. I was coming off a year where we had 50 wins, right? And then taking over a program where haven't had as much of that success the past couple of years. It was different, it was different than the sales pitch I gave at NOC and had to continue to evolve. But I think we knew our staff, we had our pitching coaches from Walter State, our hitting coaches from Parkland. So we were all from really pretty good programs and had seen different parts of the country. So I think we were able to identify some talent and use different connections and networking. And we didn't all have the same connections and networking. They were all similar, but different at the same time. So I think we were able to identify talent pretty quick. And when you have turnover, there's a lot of spots available. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think that's what kids want nowadays, is someone to believe in them, someone to give them an opportunity and to have a vision too for their development and for their career. And, I'm too impatient to have a 3 or 5-year plan. We're going to go all in. That's our mantra here, is we're going to go all in and try to win now. And these guys, if we're going to recruit an older group, I don't want to waste their year trying for them to, be a stepping stone or something. We want them to feel like they've got a chance to win right away. And if we do, great. Our vision was pretty spot on. If we don't, then we'll regroup and figure out a way to get there as soon as possible.
And, speaking of, the specifics of it, you signed 30 guys onto that roster, 17 from 4-year, 13 from junior college. Talk about just the entire summer of just trying to bring in that volume of players.
Yeah, well, campus was buzzing. There was a lot of guys in and out, and you have to, it's kind of like speed dating, right? You have to formulate a relationship really quick. The good thing is some of those guys, maybe we had, when I was at junior college, or my assistants, maybe we finished up number 2 or 3 on their list initially, and then you kind of circle back with them, and now you already have kind of a relationship. And we had a relationship with some of those coaching staffs where we got guys from multiple guys from programs. So it was busy. It was a lot of film. It was a lot of late nights. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, we had on a lot of different summer ball leagues, bought a lot of different subscriptions to watch those games and see how guys were doing, and then kind of, stat checking a little bit, watching synergy, watching some different things, and just trying to connect the dots the best we could to see if we were making the right decision. And some were absolute no-brainers, and some we've gotten here and we're like, wow, we're really glad that we took a chance on that guy. Some there's a little bit of a learning curve, and we're confident with time and development that they're going to get there. But yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. There was a lot of nights where, like, I started speaking on speaker because, like, your bicep kind of starts hurting going like this the whole time, right? So I was on speakerphone or had the AirPods in the whole time. And the nice thing is it's super hot here, kind of humid. It was a really wet summer, but we've got an indoor football field right there. So I think the one day I counted like 10,000 yards, was before lunch. It was just back and forth pacing on the phone. So, yeah, we had fun with it though as a staff. And I think, it was something you don't really look forward to doing again. Hopefully don't have to do again, but it was a unique experience. It was a ton of fun. If you love building relationships and you love recruiting, then I think it wasn't easy by any means, but it wasn't horrible.
And so to kind of branch off that too, Coach, curious to get your thoughts on, what that recruiting pitch was like. What did you say to those recruits that helped attract them in Missouri Western that you can reflect on, to people that are listening in? What should we expect out of Missouri Western?
Yeah, I think we're going to be physical. I think that's something, like, we're going to have some good stuff on the mound. I think our bullpen's going to be really good. It might not have been that absolute no-brainer frontline arm because, that's what everybody's recruiting in the fall. So some of those no-brainer frontline arms were gone, but we got to get a lot of guys that maybe had past success, especially, guys that were Division I kickbacks, had past success at JUCO, had some physical tools, maybe would just had some inconsistency issues, or they were just 20 to 40 inning guys that were bullpen or that number 4 arm, but at a really good program. Like, we wanted to get a bunch of winners, want to get a bunch of guys with past success, past consistency, because that's what baseball is, is who's going to be able to be really consistent. But we're going to be physical. Like, we play in a big yard, and I don't think it looks as big as it has in years past, if that makes sense. We've got a lot of guys who've had some high extra base hit, OPS totals in the past, and then on the mound, like, I think we're going to be able to spin it with the best of them, and we're going to be. I don't think anybody's going to, be able to sit off speed against us. We've got some guys that can really run it up there. But again, it comes back to consistency. But I think the sales pitch was, opportunity number 1, number 2, like, got a coaching staff. I think it has a winning background and got really good facilities. We've got 5 athletic trainers, 5 strength coaches, not a lot of Division IIs can say that, one that primaries in our sport is extremely important. And then 3 coaches that I think are, experienced, but young enough we know what they're going through, being able to relate. And it's in the middle of the United States. So, I mean, we were able to kind of get some people from a little bit of everywhere, right? That was important. And we're going to be an experienced group. Even though it's a very new group, it's just those experiences came from other places. But there's still development that's taking place. And I think that's sometimes the thing that gets misinterpreted. I mean, all of us, no one, I don't think anyone's in love with the turnover, because it's constantly, you kind of live in a sense of anxiety and stress. Like, if your guys are going to do too well, it's like, it's crazy to think about that. But development still takes place, and I think you get some new eyes on you as a player, and some things can still occur during your junior and senior year with development. So I think that's something too.
And coach, you mentioned, that turnover, and especially in today's game of, the prevalence of the transfer portal, and things like that. Talk a little bit about how your experience working in the junior college ranks can be an asset in terms of this ever-changing landscape in college baseball.
Yeah, like this may be unpopular, but like we told a couple guys that maybe like we talked about, maybe we got a guy or two where it's like, how did that guy not go, high level Division 1, not just Division 1, but how that guy not go high level Division 1? And it's like, hey man, like, take this as a year where if you blow up and you get a really good opportunity afterwards, then take it. And I think, I'm not naive to that, but if you love it here, then stay, and if you love our vision, then stay, because, our assistant coach, Chris Monroe, like he played independent professional baseball, and there's a lot of really good players have, like, I coached a player in the summer, and I think you're familiar with him, like Dason Crows, who's now in AAA. Like, I was a Quincy baseball player, like it can happen. There's a lot of really good players from Division 2 that end up playing professional baseball. So I think it's like, hey, let's get some volume of work here, and not that you're not going to have to win a job or compete for a job, but if we are who you think you are, you're going to be able to come in and put together everything that you want to do. And it's just, I think this summer with the amount of uncertainty about the DSA and uncertainty about the rosters, I think a lot of players were a little bit, in my experience, were a little bit more inclined to go Division 2 than maybe in years past when I was at JUCO and had to tell some of our guys, late, like, hey, like there's some good Division 2s out there. There's some really good ones, and you might need to start considering that. Go where you're wanted, go where you can make an impact, go where they know the last name on the back a little bit, and they're going to be able to pronounce it right, and they're going to be able to build a relationship with you.
And to kind of go into the coaching side of it, when you did take this role, what were some, aside from filling out the roster, what are some big priorities that you're instilling in this program here on in the fall?
Yeah, I think it's just I think winning is a skill set, talking about it. There are no moral victories. Like there's a couple of blue bloods in this league, and if we just go and like, oh, we lost 6-5, that's not good enough, like we have to be able to get past just being able to compete or being in the conversation. Like we need to get to the spot where we're winning games. Like ultimately, like that's the end of the day, that matters. The scoreboard matters. And I think just putting that in our guys, mindset, where inter squads, there's something on the line. Like we like to compete in some format where there's a winner and loser every single day. Yeah, I mean, like we talk about it, winners win, like winners want to be around winners. So it's just something like we talk about winning baseball. Like I think in inter squad sometimes, right, you try to go get yours. You try to kind of almost have that alpha mindset of, oh, I'm going to a bunch of guys, especially a bunch of new guys, like they're trying to show everybody who they are. And it's like sometimes like just hitting behind the runner, run around third, less than 2, getting the ball in the air to the big part of the field. Like those are skill sets that is winning baseball. First and second, being able to lay down a drag bunt and beat it out, or being able to execute a hit and run, or being able to on defensively get a trail runner out and prevent the trail runner to get into scoring position. Those are all winning baseball skill sets that aren't talked about a lot and that sometimes get lost in the day and age we are with showcases and events like that. And with everybody chasing exit velo or whatever, like defense wins games, offense wins games, pitching wins games, but there's stuff in between that that really we need to pay attention to. So I think it's just when everything on the scoreboard's even, what are those hidden stats that are going to win the game? Those are some things we're working on right now.
And speaking of things you're working on, let's talk a little bit about your time at NOC. The last 2 seasons you were pretty known as a pretty high octane offense, average over 360, OPS over 1,000.
Yeah.
What about that philosophy that works so well that you could translate here at Mo West?
Yeah, I think it's number one, getting the talent, getting competition where guys aren't necessarily knowing they're the guy. I think like being able to having to compete with some anxiety is good because there's only so many ways you can simulate that, right? So our environment is extremely tough. We've got multiple machines going. We've got some really tough settings. Our objectives are tough. Our standards tough, and we don't lower it for anyone or anybody or anything. Like and I think we train unique. Everybody has a different learning skill set. Are they kinesthetic? Are they auditory? Is it read write? Sometimes journal's really good for one guy. Sometimes film's really good for another guy. But another guy, film might be totally paralysis. So I think it's like kind of that educating background in my family where I kind of use that in that teacher mind is finding out how they learn best and building that relationship with them, and then just constantly putting them in different constraints so they can be their best hitting coach. Because I can't tell them like, hey, our hands need to be here, or like we need to land in this launch position, or our posture needs to be like this when they're in the box, right? Sometimes it's like, hey, hit the ball really hard to this part of the field when off of this pitch, and how many times can we do that and be consistent? And then it's fun, when you're around guys that are 6'2", 200. Like we all love the guy that's 5'9", 160 and is going to find a way to get it done. But if you can have some physicality, there's more margin for error, right? The more bat speed you have, the more exit velocity you have, the more margin for error you have. And I think we try to do that while not striking out or giving up at bats. Like how much controlled violence can we have? I think that can be there's a little bit of misinformation out there that just because you're trying to hit for power, there's a ton of swing and miss and ton of bad swing decision. Like, nope, like swing decision is one of the big things we talk about. Timing's a big thing we talk about. And sometimes it's getting a lot of those guys that have huge power numbers. And when they get to the next level, it's honestly quieting them down. It's like, hey, man, you are big. You are physical. You do this in the weight room. Like, let's quiet that down because you don't have to have all these extra movements. So it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's also at the end of the day, it's just getting your hitters fine-tuned with their swing decisions, their timing, and then constantly challenging it. Like right when I see a guy's light bulb, I let him have it for a little bit, and then we're trying to find a way to kind of mess with him a little bit. Our pitching coach and I constantly talk about how can we pitch a guy in a certain scrimmage, how he might get pitched in the year. And vice versa. Maybe we take a guy who's a really good sinker slider guy and we put him against a bunch of guys that hit the low ball well. So they have to kind of combat that. How are they going to have success when their bread and butter is taken away?
And Coach, you talk a little bit about, like you mentioned, that sinker slider guy, specific examples. It sounds like it's more of like a representative environment, and talk a little bit about designing the impact of designing those representative environments in practice. So that way it becomes a little bit less tougher in games.
Yeah, I think it's really just trying to have them be their best hitting coach or pitching coach, right? And being able to diagnose. We talk about like playing the slice a little bit, but on the hitting side, I guess I'll stay on is, there's the high ride guys with the splitter or 12-6, or it's the 3/4 guy who's got a little bit of the sinker slider and maybe a really good changeup. And we'll try to put those settings on in the fastball. Maybe I'll try to change my arm slot, or my assistant and I have different arm slots, and my ball naturally cuts a little bit more. So when we face a guy that is a little OT and cuts, like that's when I'll throw BP. And when we got a guy who can really get downhill, that's when Coach Monroe throws BP. And when we've got a guy that can maybe spin it a little bit more, that's when Coach O'Donnell does. So, but simulating that and like, hey, this is when we get to a guy that can really ride it at the top of the zone. This is the swing in our tool bag, so to speak, to how to beat it. And this is kind of our approach off of it. We just want to have them be able to figure that out for themselves, so they're not paralyzed by information. They can actually apply it.
And to kind of go back a little bit on the experience with the junior college, player development is rather rapid at that level.
Yeah.
How do you plan to use that to your advantage now, leading a 4-year program, excuse me?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I really miss the JUCO, like be able to play 14 dates. I miss that a ton because you just find out so much about your team and how they compete. You know how it is with inter squads, right? Like you've been there, like you walk away and you're either like, our hitting's really good and our pitching, we can't pitch, or our pitching's really good, but man, we can't hit. And I find myself, even after all these years, still doing that. But defense, base running, those are some things that you can kind of quantify and see. And sometimes those are those hidden gems. But yeah, I think it's what the nice thing is at junior college, you kind of sometimes you have to work on the field a little bit more than you want to, or you have to do a couple of fundraising events that maybe here it naturally kind of comes to us a little bit more, right? We still have to do some field work, but we don't have to do everything. So there is more time to practice plan and start focusing on development and have those one-on-one meetings. The schedules can be a little bit easier at the 4-year level because it's more, we have an academic advisor in our athletic program and can kind of tailor some things to our schedule. So we're able to kind of have some more time to practice plan or just be really defined in how we recruit and how we develop and break film down a little bit more. I mean, I felt like at JUCO, I was always tired. It's just one thing after another, after another, after another. Your day never really ends. Here, there is time where you can be like, hey, today I don't have a ton. I'm going to really dive into these guys and their development and kind of come up with a new plan. Like, why are these guys struggling? Or, hey, why are these guys succeeding? Because sometimes those guys, it's like once they kind of fall off the rails, then you're able to kind of talk to them about, hey, this is what's changing.
And Coach, you mentioned it earlier. Talk a little bit about how excited you are and, how grateful you are to have facilities that you have at Missouri Western and how that can enhance player development as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have a great athletic training room. That's number one, is being healthy. Your best abilities, your durability, and your availability. We've got a really good athletic training staff. The strength and conditioning, like having VBT units and having force plates and having jump mats and just all lasers and all this thing, like you just don't have, some other places. And then being able to have strength coaches with such an intense background and able to use that. And I'm never the smartest man in the room when I'm with them, which is a good thing. You want to be around people that are going to test you and challenge you and you're not the expert in. And then, we've got 6 cages in our indoor turf football field area. That's huge. The field is, turf infield and turf halo, and we're getting new turf this summer for that area. And then being able to have lights, at JUCO, my last JUCO, we didn't have lights. So if there was a constraint with time, with weather, like you were really you were constrained. And here it's like, there was a couple times where like, hey, there's a window after 6 p.m. All right, let's just move practice back or move the scrimmage back to then. And there is value, right? Because every tournament, you usually play under the lights in some format in a tournament. And I felt like at JUCO, sometimes we weren't able to really simulate that the best I wanted to because the spin looks different. Some hitters naturally hit better or worse at night. And fly ball comms is different. Outfield play is definitely different, I think, at night. So, yeah. And then sometimes, when you don't have that indoor football field area in the winter, your defense maybe come February is rough the first couple weeks. It's still going to be rough for everyone a little bit, but that curve gets shortened, I think, for sure with those resources and facilities.
And Coach, you kind of talked a little bit about earlier, but kind of want to expand upon it and kind of mention the community aspect of it. At St. Joseph's, how do you plan to involve the community there? 1, and 2, how do you plan to, or what should fans be excited for this coming spring?
Yeah, I think number one, it's just trying to meet with, board members and people that are really close to the program and alumni that have meant a lot, because there, like you said, there's a ton of history. There's been 4 head coaches. So there's been a long line of success and people who've done some really big things for a long duration of time. So getting their opinions and what can we do better, and this is what our vision is, and get them to try to rally around it. And then I think too, it's nice to have young kids, my 4-year-old's playing flag football. So like being involved with the youth leagues, and he's going to start basketball up soon. So being able to be involved with the youth leagues, I think is huge. And how can we make that impact? And then, like I said, my wife's a teacher, my mom's a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher. So we want to be involved in the school districts. We go every Friday, give high fives, try to pump up the kids on Friday. I think that's big. And we try to do it at a different school district every week in, the surrounding areas and in the community of St. Joseph. So we're going to continue to do that. And then we're working a marathon on Saturday and then having an Alzheimer's awareness game on Sunday. So, you name it, we're trying to be involved with it because, we want, our program to be, front door, in the front yard. And it's the first thing that people think of when they think of Missouri Western. And we want to be a program that's not just good for a minute, but good for a long time. And how do we do that? We have to build really good relationships with people in the community, people at the university, and people in our program. And I think that's how you make a long-lasting impact.
And speaking of relationships and family, Coach, and the final question I have for you is, who are some mentors or people in your life that helped get to where you are today?
Yeah. Seth Thompson was my high school baseball coach, and he took a chance on me when I was super young. And we got to be with each other for 4 years as player coach, and then 4 years as coach. And we got to win 3 state titles during those 4 years as working with coaches together. And he's a guy I can call up, and he can be a soundboard. And, I don't call him up all the time, but when I do, it's impactful. And I think too, just some of those experiences you have early on in your career, I would tell young coaches, just pay attention to them, because I think as an assistant, you take things for granted about the head coaching role, and then you get into it and you're like, wow, now I understand why it was done this way. And you don't have it all figured out, but the only way to do that is to get in that chair. And I think too, it's like calling former players as well. Like, hey, we did this maybe 3-4 years ago. How'd you like it? I see this guy who's kind of like you. How do you think we handle that? I think that's important too, is calling your former players and checking in. Not just your mentors, but I call my mentors too. But I would say calling former players and not just seeing how they're doing, but hey, what do you think about this? That's huge, because maybe in real time they hated it, or maybe they loved it, and now they have a different spin on things. Kind of time, I think, really is good for that. And I think some things with baseball, just the time never changes it, right? But when you get older, you don't want to get stuck in your ways. That's one thing that drove me nuts when I was an assistant coach or when I was a player, is I don't think this is beneficial. We've this is X, Y, and Z, and we're still doing it. And we're still kind of stuck in our ways. And as a head coach, I don't want to be that way. I want to have new experiences, and I want to continue to evolve, and I want our staff to evolve, and I want our program to evolve. But there are some things at the end of the day that win baseball games, and you have to take your vitamins sometimes, even though it's not fun. You want to eat the meats and potatoes, but sometimes you got to take your vitamins and do what's necessary to be successful. And sometimes that's going to bed early and eating right and getting in the weight room, getting in the athletic training room. Those are all things we don't think about. It's that stuff wins games a lot more than just going out trying to hit pumps and, blowing cheese by guys.
Coach, that was rather well said, and we appreciate you taking out the time to talk about your program, talk about Missouri Western, and excited to see how this team performs in the spring.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate being on and talking, and hopefully we can talk a year from now and talk about how it was, one of the biggest turnarounds in Division II baseball. That'd be a fun conversation. So I'm looking forward to trying to achieve that. And Yeah. Thanks again for having me, and hope you have a great rest of your day and in your week, man.
Absolutely. And that is head coach Michael Keeran at Missouri Western State University. We'd like to give a big thank you to all of our regional tier Patreon members. We couldn't make it to the ninth inning without the support of all of you. You're the real MVPs, hitting a home run for the team every single time. Thank you.